Welcome to InFocus, the National Policing Institute's monthly conversation series. I'm Humberto Cardounel, and today I'm joined by Sergeant Soltero with the Tucson Police Department. Sergeant Soltero is a task force officer, TFO, with the FBI Southern Arizona Violent Crimes Task Force, Gang Task Force, and oversees Tucson's NIBIN program, Firefly gunshot detection technology, and its Crime Gun Intelligence Center. So quite a few things, a full plate. But Sergeant Soltero, thank you for joining us.
Hey, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, we know that CJICs, as we commonly refer to them, don't just happen overnight. It takes time to build these CJIC centers. It takes time to build the partnerships, and partnerships is a critical component of a successful CJIC. So can you tell us a little bit about, how Tucson built their CJIC center, and also talk about the partnerships. The partnerships don't occur overnight. It takes time to develop those and foster those relationships, but it's a critical component. So if you can kind of talk about those two things, I'm sure our audience would love to hear about it.
Yeah, it took some time for Tucson to get this up and running and then to further it to where it's at now. We started with, I think it was roughly 9 partners in 2016. We made the jump from moving all of our NIBIN machines and all the technology out of the crime lab and into the investigative world. So then we had to staff it. We had to train up the personnel. Once we got proficient with that, we started reaching out to our partnering agencies. We are bordered by a county, several tribal organizations, some federal organizations, and like 3 small municipalities. So reaching out to those first was a pretty obvious choice, and they were really on board with it. We kind of had to get through the process of how they're going to get their evidence and crime guns to us and all the logistics. But once that was ironed out, it was pretty smooth for about 4 or 5 years. And then when we started working toward becoming more of a CJIC, we reached out. I think we're up to about 24 agencies now in the area, both federal, state, tribal. And it's been really helpful to get those partners with a lot of the stuff we've done. From there, you have to do the back end of it of how you disseminate leads, how you share records, that kind of stuff to make sure everybody's getting timely information and getting everything in a responsible time frame. So that's kind of been the journey for TPD, but we're really happy with where we're at these days.
Yeah. And can you just kind of touch on a little bit about some of the partners, stakeholders? I know that for a successful CJIC model, we talk about not only law enforcement partners, the traditional partners, but also some ancillary partners, our prosecutors, our laboratories, those types of stakeholders that sometimes we may not really think about, but are a critical component to the whole CJIC success story.
Yeah, there's I mean, CJIC, a successful CJIC is dependent on proper networking and good relationships with as many people as you can get. So we now have like a weekly gun stat meeting, and it includes everything from probation, other law enforcement, federal, state, and tribal, like I said. And then we've got the U.S. Attorney's Office in there, the County Attorney's Office, the Attorney General in the region, and then we've got several like group violence intervention components in there to help with, if there's somebody that we see that could maybe benefit some from assistance and some resources, we can kind of get on the front end of that side of it. We've got all of the ATF personnel down in Tucson are a big help with this kind of thing. And then we try to, use as much as we can without kind of giving away secret sauce, but dealing with the media and the public and making sure that they're aware of what we're doing and why we're doing it. And it really helps to kind of get the buy-in from everybody all the way around.
Fantastic. So I've had the pleasure of being in Tucson, so I've got a chance to kind of see things firsthand. Success stories. I'm sure every cop has a good story or two to tell. Any success stories you'd like to share with us or with the group?
Yeah, I mean, I'll highlight one recently that this was in the past few weeks, and I like it because it kind of traverses several jurisdictions for us. It was a shooting case that happened on tribal land. We knew that the suspect vehicle was a specific black passenger car. We had nothing further on that. The victims were 2 juveniles who were shot at with an AK-47. Several times we did recover shell casings. FBI conducted that investigation. They got us the shell casings over to NIBIN. We put them in. A few weeks later, we had in the TPD city jurisdiction a domestic violence incident. Turns out the suspect from the domestic violence incident had some ties to the tribal case, but there was nothing to charge him at that point. He did have a similar make, model, and color of vehicle. We worked the state DV angle of it, and during that investigation, we partnered pretty heavily with FBI's Indian Country Squad. And once we got him in custody, we were able to get a search warrant for the house for guns, and we found an AK-47, test fired that, entered it into NIBIN, and it hit to the original tribal incident with the juveniles as victims. After doing that and going through, a ton of digital evidence and things like that, we were able to implicate this guy in several violent felonies. And, we weren't really sure how deep it went, but we got some pretty good cases at the end of it. And we're able to put together a solid prosecutorial case based on the NIBIN and CJIC partnership.
Yeah, that's great. That's, what we're here about is you're talking about the benefits and the technology and the linkage that CJIC gives us to be able to connect violent crime gun offenders with violent crimes and trying to identify those before they become more prolific. So a great success story. As cops, Ben, we're always looking for, show me the evidence, show me the proof kind of thing. Any statistics, any data that you can share with us that talks about the success or the benefits of CJIC?
Yeah, and that's one thing I'm really proud of with our agency, because I know the line level, the detectives, the officers, the civilian support staff that helps kind of make all this happen. These guys bust their butt and they do a great job, and it's day in and day out. So for many years, we were kind of really working very hard, and it seemed like we couldn't get. I think our non-fatal shooting solve rate was somewhere in the 20s, which is about national average, but we weren't happy with that. So when we really got serious about our CJIC and we started kind of restructuring our special investigations section, we developed 2 shooting investigations units, and they're both comprised of about 7 to 8 investigative personnel and a supervisor. And they would respond to any incident where the bullet leaves the gun. Before that, we had really disparate investigations where domestic violence, gangs, narcotics, they were all kind of going to these different areas. And so that hurt our solve rate. So when we combined all of that under one team, and we got some really quality detectives in that team, we upped our solve rate within, I think it was like 4 months, we were up to 70% solve rate on those from the previous 20. And we've maintained that 70%-ish solve rate. I think we're actually climbing into the high 70s now for those, coming on a year now. So that's one of the stats I'm proud of, because we're able to bring back to the line level and say, hey, all your work is paying off and people are seeing it. So
Great statistics there. Again, CJICs don't occur overnight. Relationships don't get developed overnight. Any advice for any chief or sheriff or law enforcement executive or command level staff that are considering a CJIC model? Any advice on what you guys learned in Tucson to build yours? I'm sure there were some lessons learned. And any advice that you could impart, any recommendations or suggestions that might benefit our profession, we'd love to hear.
yeah, I think the 2 biggest pieces of advice are at the executive level, you have to buy in. It's got to be something where you're willing to transfer bodies and put some resources and money at a time when everybody's kind of hurting for resources and bodies. But you gotta invest in it. And then once you do, I would say co-location is key to those partnerships. You can have Zoom meetings. You can have all the phone calls you want, but there's something that's missed if you don't have co-located units, and at least a once a week meeting to get this thing off the ground and making sure there's accountability across the board. So those would be the 2 biggest pieces of advice.
Great. Well, Sergeant Soltero, kudos to you and Tucson and entire Tucson PD for such a great example of taking this approach, this concept, this technology, because as we know that CJIC also relies on technology as a component, but embracing all these things to have a successful model that hopefully we can replicate and others can learn from. So congratulations to you and Tucson PD for implementing a very effective, highly effective CJIC model for others to consider. So thank you for joining us. Folks, we'll see you next month for another issue of InFocus. But in the meantime, thank you for what you do.